It took me a long time to really own being a director. I think because I don't know. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a therapy session.
She has written and directed 10 features, 6 female-driven thrillers. She did a 2-book deal recently. She's done a whole bunch of stuff, and she's a freaking professor. She is giving back.
My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of.
When somebody asks you, what do you do? How do you describe yourself?
That is such a loaded question, Nancy, and here's why. It took me years and years before I told people I was a writer, and it took me many, many more years before I told people I was a director or a filmmaker. I think some of it had to do with being a woman in this business. I felt that I would be maybe judged or more like prove it if I said that. So I kind of really needed to build up a large body of work so that if I needed to, I could prove it.
Oh, interesting.
Even when I met my now husband 20 years ago, he always reminds me that night he asked me, what did I do? And I said, I'm a writer. But I had already directed 3 features at that point and had a master's in film production.
Well, I mean, there's something about like what you aspired to be 20 years ago. And I think I've known you long enough to know that 20 years ago, you were like, well, I'm going to make these independent films because I'm a director. And now you're doing it for other people and branching off into other areas.
I think that was the big shift was it wasn't that I greenlit myself. It was other people greenlighting myself as a director. I think as a writer, it just, once it became such a true practice for years that it's the main part of my focus.
Right. So like getting the contract and the paycheck, it gave you the freedom and the confidence to say, I'm a writer.
Yeah, I waited until someone gave me permission through a contract.
So you go to a party, a Hollywood party tonight. Sorry that you have to go to that. And someone says, what do you do? What do you say now?
Well, I've found a new love. I'm now a directing professor at Chapman University in the film school at Dodge College.
Wow.
Nice.
I was just giving notes on shot lists to one of my directing students right before I tuned in to this. So yes, I'm a writer director, but I said yes to a 2-year full-time teaching contract. So I'm a professor now.
Yeah.
Writer, director, professor.
I love that. That's wonderful. So what does success as an artist mean to you?
Do you consider yourself an artist?
Yeah. Now that you're a professor.
I always feel like as long as I carve out time to write, then I am an artist because I think writing is my primary love. So while I'm getting my sea legs with school, I sold a second book. I have a book that just released in October in the German language only because it was a Swiss publisher that picked it up. I didn't write it in German. They translated it. So I'm hoping that they figure out other markets, like an English speaking market to sell it to, but we'll see. But in the interim, I sold another book, but I have to write it. So that's what I'll be focusing on mostly. Maybe this summer I'll do another movie, but I really want to write this book.
Do you think you'll be able to write and teach at the same time?
Yes.
Are you able to do other projects or is that all you have time for?
Well, I can only direct in the summer because I accepted full-time employment. There's a fairly generous winter break, but you could barely get a movie in the can in that time. I would rather write right now.
Do you have any students now that you kind of, I don't know, maybe see yourself in or that you're like specifically rooting for because there's something about them that reminds them of you or that you want to help a specific person because they're so lost? Or...
I have to say, it's sort of funny. I feel a very deep maternal connection to the students because they're all younger than my own son. And I do remember that excitement of being in, for me, it was grad school. I teach grad students and undergrads and film and everything and learning about film. Yeah, I want them to go out there with the best tools and abilities possible. So I kind of mother hen. I'm a little bit like a helicopter parent. I realize this. Yeah, I'll be angry if I see a scene. I'm like, where's your coverage? What happened? You can't do that. I'm talking to them at a level of like, yeah, I've done 12 movies and I've already completed my master's degree and I've been studying film for 30 years. And, they're great because they're sponges, but sometimes I'm like, I kind of need to let them mess up. And I think I'm a little afraid of letting them mess up.
That's amazing that you know that about yourself. And I also, having known you for a long time, you are maternal. You not only take care of people, but you want to fix things. I feel like, I'm not saying you're a fixer. That's a very different type of personality. But yeah, this all makes sense to me now, looking back at our relationship and our times that we spent together. You are a cheerleader for other people and you care deeply about other people and their art. Do you think you got that from your own mom?
Oh, yeah. Wow. This is a therapy session. Thank you.
See how he wove that in there so cleverly.
I can't believe you hadn't already thought of that. That's great.
That was the opinion of my mom. I mean, when people were creative and if she was around them, she was so interested in what they were doing. And I mean, really, she's the reason I know you, PM.
Your mom?
Mm-hmm. She had seen Stomp at Royce Hall and she said, oh, you got to go. You got to go and you got to take Jordan.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Nancy and I were at a cabaret show last night and she was introducing me to an artist that I had never seen before. She said, oh, so like, are you and Tamar friends or something? And I was like, Tamar was like a groupie, but then like she kind of became part of the family and then like she became part of my family.
Yeah.
And I heard you like toured all over with them.
That's a crazy story. Do we tell that story?
You stalked them.
Yes, of course we do. I mean, you went to South America for Christ's sake.
When my mom told me to go see Stomp, afterwards I bought my son 2 drumsticks because you guys had swag. And I said, do you want to get the performers to sign it? Because of course I was in film school. I had a Sharpie. I had Sharpies everywhere. And so we went, I guess there was like a meet and greet outside in the back that anybody could go to. And we went around to all the performers to get them to sign. And one of the performers I met, we got a tiny bit flirtatious and I said my full name and he had a photographic memory in it. And after months and months of phone calls from him, I was with my best friend Jenny and we were up in Vancouver. We went camping and then we were going to go down the coast. It was like a summer trip, besties with our kids on no budget. And so we were staying with friends in Vancouver and Stomp was there.
Yep.
So we went. But at that point, I was like, I don't know if this guy, I don't know.
Good instincts. Good instincts.
I thought they would be better because she had recently been dumped like in a really bad way and she needed kind of a boost. And I thought, here you go. I found a guy for you.
And then you just befriended all the gays.
Yeah, well, and then he, of course, he invited me to South America on tour. And I was like, Jenny, you need to come with me because I think you guys should hang out because I don't really want to, I'm not interested in him romantically. And, so yeah, she was like, okay. And we had one credit card. We came and met you guys in Brazil and we thought Brazil was really poor and it would be super cheap and it wasn't. So sometimes we'd stay with you guys. And a lot of times we were on our own taking buses, catching up while you guys flew around the country.
Right.
So wait, where were the kids when all this was going on?
With their dads. We were like, see ya.
I don't think I ever thought, wait a minute, why are these moms here? I never thought of
The kids?
Yeah, I never thought of the kids, right?
No. We were just 2 young chicks that were controversial.
We're going to talk about your documentary, but I remembered you like saying to me, I really want to do a documentary on this guy. And then I remembered you taking me to his studio and leaving and going, oh my God, this is fascinating. You have to make this happen. And then I don't even know how long it was later that you made it happen, but like, you want to tell the listener about this documentary?
Yeah, I did. I mean, obviously I was enamored with Lynn Fowkes, the artist, who at the time was 70, I think. And I had cast him in my 3rd feature as an actor. He played a character and it was really fun. His character was based on him. The film was improvisational. It was an 18-page script, but each scene was a paragraph. Everybody knew where they were starting and where they were heading. I could work with non-professionals like Henry. I cast Henry in that film.
Right. He was a fellow stomper. Yeah.
What was the film called?
Your Name Here. It's very hard to find. I think a friend has it up on Vimeo, but it's basically two kids trying to start a band in Silver Lake, because Silver Lake was this mecca of music back then, like the Beastie Boys and Beck, and there was something in the water. So anyway, I was just really motivated to make this really sweet coming of age film. But yeah, so Lynn was this amazing artist living at the brewery, this place my son and I had lived prior to Silver Lake downtown. And he just seemed like he'd been forgotten by the art world. And I couldn't figure out why, because his artwork was so interesting and he was so interesting. So yeah, I partnered with my sound person for my first three films, Chris Quilty. And Chris was really excited to make his first film, but also to make it about Lynn. He had never met an artist in his life. So for me, when we were filming him in his studio, I had lived at the brewery. I knew his studio. I grew up around artists, and I just thought he was just another cool artist. But, I got to see him through other people's eyes, which is, God, this guy's amazing. And as artist goes, he is amazing. So, and difficult and self-deprecating and all the great things that make up a human being.
And he's a visual artist as well as a musician artist.
That's right. Just super talented. So yeah, it was a long journey. It started, he was 70 and finished when he was 77. And, we never really had an ending. We didn't shoot full time by any means. You can see in the film, there's times where it says 3 years later.
I remember that.
Yeah. Or if we filmed something, it didn't end up in the movie.
I feel like I saw the film at an art gallery in New York, in the Meatpacking District or something.
Yes. So it started as a short film.
Yep.
While he finished that big painting, and it went off to New York, and it was a last minute decision for me to go and film the art opening, but we were done. We had pitched this idea to him and to the gallerist, and they said, we'll play it on a loop as part of the art show, this movie about him finishing this piece. I think it was like 14 minutes long or something. And just on a lark, I decided to go film the opening, which I assumed was going to be filled with people. And he was going to, the bell of the ball and all the things he talks about wanting. And honestly, I, of course, invited all my friends in New York to come, and family and everybody. And that was about 60% of the people that showed up. Like, no one really showed up.
It's so surprising.
But Lynn called it. He didn't think they were going to come. And his reasons I needed to explore. And that's what opened up the bigger documentary is, has Lynn been knowingly erased from art history? Did Lynn piss off too many people? And that's why no one came? Like, people have personal vendettas? Or is it just a tough art market right now? Or is an LA artist never going to have a good time in New York? Is that whole LA, New York art world scene still a thing? We just had so many questions. And so that's what embarked us. Like, we spent 6 months filming the short, and then we spent 6.5 more years filming, trying to get the answers to those questions. And we never got the answers, but the journey was really fascinating. And in the end, he was rediscovered. Spoiler alert. So we quickly finished the movie and rode his coattails. And it's funny because some places like the LA Times and some other places credit our movie for the reason he was rediscovered, but that's not true at all. And in the film, we make it very clear it is really Ali Sabatnik, this woman from New York who had relocated to LA and was asking around, what are some interesting artists in town that I should know about? Somebody said you should check out Lynn Fowkes. And when she went for a studio visit, she just was like, how is this artist and his work just sitting here right under our noses, and the Hammer Museum's not, why aren't we doing anything? So she convinced the museum to put him in to a show that had, I think, 8 artists, and he had the first room, and everybody was blown away because it was the first time people saw his work over a 40, 50-year span. So then the Hammer thought, well, we got to give him a retrospective. So happened. So he became, a momentary international art star, and he was happy, and he's still making artwork. He's 88 now.
He became famous.
We're going to get to that. Don't you worry.
He was art world famous in art school. He dropped out of art school, and you had LACMA, the LA County Museum of Art, Chicago Institute, the Pompidou in Paris, and a couple other museums I'm not remembering right now buying his work when he was in his early 20s in the 60s.
Do you think that this was a lot of work for you, a lot of money. Do you think that you were attracted to making a documentary about him because a part of you wanted to share his work with the world? Like you felt somewhat, what's the word? Not responsible, but like you were just called to like kind of amplify his voice? Or did you find that he was the perfect subject for your type of art and the kind of filmmaking that you wanted to make?
That's such a good question.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. I think because we became close when I cast him in this other project that was a very personal project for me, we had this connection, and I was scratching my head. Like, why is this guy not a household name? Why are all the people that he came up with huge multimillionaire artists and he's still scrapping to make his rent? I just didn't understand, because it was not for a lack of talent. So,
yeah.
But the thing is, for me, I went through a very rough period personally as an artist while I was filming. And what was great is every time I would walk into a studio with my partner, CQ, to film, I'd always come away with this feeling of like, it's okay to work in a vacuum and have nobody know what you're doing. The true artistry is doing it anyway, because that's what Lynn was doing. He was in there working every day, like frantically, but not without like anybody breathing down his neck. Like, you've got to show and you've got to go. And he just was self-motivated to make art because he was compelled. And it always made me feel like, I don't have to be depressed or angry or sad that no one's calling me. Okay, do you want to come direct this movie for us? Do you want to write this thing for us? We want to hire you. Like that, I went through a lot of really dry periods, and I just he was like a touchstone for me. And also not being able to find an ending dragged it out. But I'm really happy because he got me through a really rough time in my life personally as an artist, when I felt like working in a vacuum was exhausting and a failure of some sort.
We were going to ask you, or we're talking to artists, so this is one of our questions, because we've both we're basically asking all the questions of things that we ourselves have experienced or noticed our friends experiencing. Something about, being stuck and like what helped you get unstuck. And you were just talking about you were stuck, right? But you were making this film. Do you feel like completing the film was the thing that unstuck you because it gave you that, like, I am capable of doing something, or one person who was influential said, you're really good. And then it gave you permission to keep going? What do you think it was?
Were you even stuck at that point?
I wouldn't say I was stuck. I turned out a lot of work. It's just I had no place to take it. I had nobody to really share it with. I'm not saying that 100%, but that's what at my darkest, worst moments, I definitely was very upset that I didn't feel like I had access. This is all before the Me Too and Time's Up movement happened. And I just it wasn't until Time's Up did I realize like what I was up against calling myself a writer, director as a woman, especially of comedy, by the way. My first 3 features are comedies. Mm-hmm. That I just was just like a fart in space. Like I didn't, I'm not saying nobody did. There were a couple people out there, women who did break through and did have careers. But for the most part, it just wasn't a welcome place for women. And I didn't realize that. I just thought if I'm talented, someone will notice.
Do you feel like no one noticed, or that they just were not giving you the opportunities?
I thought no one was noticing, and I felt like it was my fault that no one was noticing. Let me clarify that.
And why?
That I either wasn't good at self-promotion, that I didn't know the right people, that I wasn't pushing my work. I was only doing the work, but I wasn't then pushing the work. Mm-hmm. There's that whole other side of being an artist of, being the loudest voice and raising your hand every place. That is a tactic. And I don't know if it's a tactic that works, but it's not one I ever really made space for because I was always too busy working on what I was working on. And so, yeah, if I got into a film festival, great. If Variety wrote up one of my films and called it great, wonderful. I just still didn't hire a publicist to echo it or make cold calls and say, I'm the person that was written up in Variety this week, or I'm the person who won this film festival. I just was like, oh, cool. Thank you. But I was always in process on something else. And then I'd lift up my head and be like, what? Nothing happened. Like I was on the first blacklist, which is a huge deal now to be on the blacklist for scripts. I believe I was the only unrepresented writer on that list.
Wow.
And one of the few women. And people were like, oh, insider people were like, oh, that's a big deal. Like your phone's going to be ringing off the hook. And they said the same thing also when I was written up in Variety and when I won certain film festivals. And it just didn't happen. And I felt like, oh, I'm not yelling loud enough. I'm not yelling at all from the mountaintop. I'm supposed to also somehow have time to do that on top of trying to be financially okay and carve out time to express myself and do my art. I'm also supposed to be a promotion machine. And I would go to, I think at one point I even went to like a couple seminars by different people about how they promoted. And it just sounded fucking exhausting.
And it's just a different skill. It's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
When you're a creator, that we're expected to do that. It's not natural for me either.
Yeah. And people hire people to do it for them. I just also didn't have the financial, like that. If I had the money, that wasn't some place I would want to put it, or I thought I should. I just didn't think about it. So, yeah, I don't know. And I'm not saying that everybody who does well, it's because they had a great PR machine behind them, but I don't think it hurts. And I also think there's a large element of luck of like being in the right place, right time.
So I never really was aware of how deep the struggle was. This really moves me to hear that you're talking about this. It says a lot about your drive, and very moving.
That's really kind of you. That's been something for years my husband said to me when I've been at my darkest moments. He's like, everyone thinks you're okay.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks you're great. So why would they think of you when they're like, oh, we have this opportunity? And I was like, well, what? So am I being like weirdly punished for making my own opportunities? I don't know how to tell people I'm hurting, I'm in trouble, I need help.
Because that's sort of also, I mean, it could feel like it like diminishes you as an artist, right? Like I'm not good enough, so that's why I feel bad about myself. When we know now that most of the most successful people have very big problems with themselves, are constantly struggling with themselves.
Well, the most creative certainly have that quality.
Sure. What did I say? The biggest people?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. That's like such a weird Freudian slip.
But I do think that there is something about how we're taught to, especially as women, to project ourselves. We want to maintain this I'm really cool to work with vibe and not sort of project a confidence that you can trust in me to do whatever work I need. It's like, why can't we be like anybody else? That it's like, we're artists, we're crazy, we're volatile, we're everything. And that's part of who we are and what makes us the artists that we are.
It makes me think of this dangerous word pushy. Right? Like,
absolutely.
Right? Especially women, like, I was going to say then, I'm always, right? Forever.
Right.
You don't want to come off as being pushy because then you're going to be difficult, right?
Right.
And so you're constantly like protecting yourself by not sharing yourself. And so, of course, you're thinking, I'm not sharing myself because you literally are not.
Well, we're also in a world of image where image matters and how you project yourself matters. It's very much part of the entertainment world, no matter what all of us are doing.
Was there ever a moment that you were like, this is the one? Everyone's going to know my name. I will be financially stable. People will understand what I do. Did you have that moment?
Yeah. My first feature, Memphis Bound and Gagged, I won a bunch of awards. My lead actress, who I plucked out of the theater scene in the Pacific Northwest, is now a huge star. Actually, before that, when I was in film school, my thesis film that I wrote and produced, and my friend Patrick Lamb directed, we cast Lucy Liu in that. She was an undiscovered actress also.
So she thought this is the one.
This is the one, right?
To be clear that this wasn't the one, because like she already kind of knew more than we did. But I remember we had this great moment with Lucy Liu. Like she was supposed to play this heroin addict. She was this junkie who had pawned her baby's jade bracelet and then lost her child. It's very uplifting.
Yes.
And So when she comes back, she's supposed to look greasier and crappier. And we had like this denim jacket and we had to make it look crappy. So we dragged it. We were shooting on Santa Monica Boulevard back in the 90s and at a pawn shop. It's still around, Elliot Salters. But anyway, we dragged the jacket through the gutter and then mushed it around, and then sunbaked it. And then we gave it to her. We're like, ta-da, here's wardrobe. And I remember we're getting ready to roll and sitting there and like in her position again with her back against the wall, getting ready, getting psyched into being a junkie. And she was like, did someone piss on this jacket? Oh. No one would piss on that. We're like, oh my God, what did we, it was a student film, it was like classic. But, so yeah, we thought that film was going to do really well. I don't even think we ever got it into a festival. My first feature, I thought I was going to, do well. Then when it got into festivals, I was like, here I go. I was winning festivals. I was like, here I go. And nobody called and I didn't care because I was doing my second feature. Then that variety, blah, blah, nothing. Third feature kind of didn't get as much love as the first two. I had huge technical problems on that film. And then the documentary. I was just like, this is, I will get work in docuseries maybe, doing something. I'll be able to use this to pitch, to get an agent, something. No, nothing. And then, sorry, I forgot in between my big break, Jeremy Fink and The Meaning of Life. 2010.
Sure, big stars.
Working, yeah, right? Big. Yeah. My entire crew, but none of the men had ever had a female director. I was their first. I was like on a goodwill tour.
Oh my God, that's unimaginable in this day and age.
We're cool. We're not shrill. I was like basically like teaching them that female directors are.
We're not shrill.
Yeah. So, I put up with some crazy stuff on that one. I had a producer like literally pat me on the head a couple of times.
No,
God.
It was rough. And I also, it's one thing you're making your own movies on a small budget, but this at the time was like a $1.2 or $1.3 million budget. And yes, I was directing Academy Award winners and also bringing in my people. I got to bring in Michael Urie and Betsy Brandt. I got to work with Marion Seldes. I asked, and they gave me Marion Seldes. Like I was like, she got to have a scene, and that was a big deal for me. And I worked with a bunch of actors who are just working actors, and so it was great and a lot of respect. And it was, between me and the actors. Well, that's not true. I think there's one actor who's mad at me. And I'm okay with it. I don't really care. So it was his doing, but not anybody I listed. And Mira Sorvino was amazing. She took a look around and saw we were having some problems, like we were having some art department problems and stuff and timing problems. And she pulled me aside and she was like, next week when we shoot my bedroom scene, the set, all the art direction, everything needs to be there. Like I need that for my character. And she and I had already developed this relationship where we could have side talks because the whole reason we got her was I met with her and she said, I'm not going to do this role. It was based on a book as written. Why is the female character always just like the frumpy librarian, but the male character is like magical and big? And she said, why can't the librarian character be magical and big? And she lives through books. And she just opened up this whole door to allow me to rewrite a character differently from the book and allow this female spirit of like living through, I got to talk about The Giving Tree and The Little Prince and, all my favorite books. And so we already had this nice shorthand. And I remember I said to her, I said, Mira, it's going to be what it's going to be. I really can't, I can only make so much happen on this set. And she was like, you need to grow a pair. And she meant it nicely. And she was right. She was absolutely right, because I also was like trying to make sure everybody knew that a female director is not a difficult person.
Right.
In a weird way, it sounds like that was the one because of everything that you learned from it and the confidence that it gave you and the amount of collaboration that you had on that project. I guess there's something different from the one that's going to make you never have to look for work ever again. It always comes to you.
Yeah.
Is there ever one?
The one like when you're young, and we were then, right? The one that at that time makes you say, you know what? I know what I'm doing and I'm willing to continue to learn from the people around me.
I'm curious to know if on that set you actually did grow a pair.
I could not get full backing from my team about what I wanted until we were shooting pickups about 6 months after we had done principal photography, because that was the only time that I was really truly heard about the problems that I was up against.
Wow.
And they actually handed me a real baton of like, you are the director.
So what has changed since the Me Too movement as far as how you feel as a woman in the business?
I was fortunate in that, I guess in 2016, Lifetime put out a mandate that we're making films for women. Why do we not have female directors? And so a former manager of mine, Kyla York, called me up. She's like, I'm producing a Lifetime movie and I want to put you up as director. Are you available? And I said, absolutely. And I got the job because of her. Yeah. And so, and then once I did one, just like if I'd gone into episodic, once I did one, it was like, oh, call for more, call for more, call for more.
Yeah.
So
those are also like extremely stressful situations, are they not? Like you have like 2 weeks of prep time. They tell you who your cast is. You have very little time to shoot. Is this all true? Or is that Hallmark?
Yes, that is true. My first Lifetime movie was a 12-day shoot in Serbia.
90-minute film.
Yeah, I think 87 or whatever they decide with commercials. But and luckily I had 2 cameras on 6 of my days, so I could get really good coverage. And by hook or by crook, we managed to get it. I believe I did go over the very last day, but I was like, come on. I mean, we have to go over to finish the scene out. But it was very intense. Also, did I already say this? It was 6 days on. It was 6 days on, 1 day off, 6 days on. And I think we had more like 3 weeks of prep. And most of them are about 3 weeks of prep. And then 13 and sometimes 14-day shoots, which I love a 14-day shoot. I'm like, oh, I'm on vacation now. But it just really forces you as a director to quickly see with your DP, either on your own or they're doing it on their own and we're talking about it, but quickly see the potential and how you can maximize and to get the coverage that you absolutely need to edit so that you're never, I mean, I'm knock wood, I've never been in an edit bay going, oh, we don't have that shot.
Yeah.
That's great.
You can't. You have to know your minimum. And then you can, if you have a little time, and there's certain scenes you kind of box out on, and you're like, this is going to go on my reel. So, or this is a really important scene, or it's a big emotional scene for the actor, and we need to give them space because we are working with super professional actors for the number 1s and 2s. And so they need, they're giving a lot. They need to have that respect from us as best we can.
But it sounds though like, I mean, on the timeline, this opportunity was, you were hired, you were a hired person to impart your directorial skills on someone else's thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like going from, I'm a filmmaker who writes my own films and now I'm doing someone else's. And did that make you happy with that? Or you were like, okay, from now on, I just have to write my own shit.
So it's a little bit of all of it, but really great that you pointed that out. One of the big things I learned was how to say, sure, we can do that. Really pick if there's something that you radically disagree with, because the second you start disagreeing, it causes problems with your producers. It just does. They're under a lot of stress and, trying to figure out how to maximize the budget. And you better have a really good reason to be saying, hey, I want to change this, or I want to pitch something to you that's different than what we discussed. Most of the producers are very seasoned producers. So when it's in the script phase, so before I got into the Writers Guild, I would rewrite these scripts. So sometimes I did it for no credit. Sometimes I even did it for no money. But it's collaborative. I send the executives or the producers my notes and we discuss them and they either give me a green light or they don't. I've never had them.
Wait, is the original writer involved in this process?
Thing is that a lot of not all these writers are as experienced as the producers and director are. And so there's just like kind of at that point, we're going on a speed clip. and knowing what will work and what won't, what will make it better. And I know I was on one film, I think we had more like 4 weeks, but the first week was soft prep, where I was giving notes to the producers and they were like, oh, these are really good points. And then they would talk to the executive and the executive would go talk to the writer and then the writer would turn a draft around. And so a week has gone by, which is a long time. And you're reading it and you're like, it's still not. And then you write up the notes again and they go, oh, good idea. Let's have a meeting. Same thing. You get a draft. And now you're packing to go somewhere. I did step up and say, we're at a juncture where the writer can't deliver what we actually need. And please, I need you to trust me that I can deliver that. And this particular executive I was working with, he was not a fan of writer directors for some reason. The older they are, the more weird rules.
He only liked writers or only liked directors? Which one did they gravitate towards?
He liked them to just be that one thing. Yeah. He didn't like when they did both. Right. And I think, a lot of these weird rules I hear from older producers who've done a lot of films, it's because they got burnt. I had an older producer who said directors never get walkies. And I was like, okay. And there was a point where I was like, I have to have a walkie. I need a walkie. They're on a boat. I can't. I'm only on the boat. I have to be able to talk to them. So I'm not on the boat. I'm over here. So, I try to respect it when they say directors never or don't or I don't like. And I try to stay away from it. But at some point, if I need it, I just have to disregard the rule that they've created because I have to do my job as well. So that particular producer, executive who didn't like writer director combos for whatever reason, he said, well, rewrite the first act and send it to me and I will decide if you'll write the rest.
And I guess you won.
Yeah, I on the airplane rewrote the first act and when I landed, sent it in. And then while I was running around doing locations and casting, it was really late in the game. He was like, this was great. Go ahead and write the rest of it. And I was like, no sleep.
You're reminding me of, you saw Desperately Seeking the Exit. And I quote a very famous Tony Award winning millionaire director who was first attached to the project, who said to me very, very early on, Peter, there's one thing you have to remember in this process. The writer is the lowest rung on the ladder.
Which is so insane.
That's infuriating.
It's absolutely true. I mean, it was for me.
No, it is true. It is true.
I'm not contributing anything, but I'm not contributing any money to the project, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone else, like the producers, can override your decisions because it's their pocketbook.
Right. Yeah, it's been an interesting discussion at the film school because one of the things I try to teach my directors is to be able to pivot because you just don't know what's going to happen. But also, that there are times that there are going to be producers who are like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't. These are the rules. And that you should play along. And I kind of got a little what for from one of my cohort professor who was a producer in the 90s. And he was like, Tamar, just because you've been abused by producers doesn't mean that you should prepare the students for that. And I was like, I've had great experiences also with producers. It's not been a straight across thing. I just know that when you're in that situation and it's somebody who's difficult, there's a way to handle them and still get your job done. Or you can try to turn it into a war and you will lose.
What do you want to do next?
I just last summer did my first Tubi film, which was very different than a Lifetime film. With Mar Vista, a company I've been trying to work with for years. And it was kind of a weird confluence. Like I finally get to the company that I did a movie with them in 2016, but I didn't really know them. The producers were the go-between. And then there's this amazing woman who runs production there named Marianne Wunsch. And she and I have a very similar trajectory. We finally had lunch. It took us like a year to have lunch. She's so busy.
In LA?
Yeah. And she's just super smart. And she's running and the production arm at Mar Vista, and they're doing tons of work with Tubi. And I kind of finally got a project with them right after I said yes to a 2-year teaching contract. So I feel like I could be doing a bunch more movies with Mar Vista, but I also, like I said, I'm loving teaching. I might just stick with it.
That's so great to hear. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I just feel like your students are so fortunate to have you because you've done all of these different things, and you encourage people to stretch and learn and grow and do all the things. You serve as a great model, I guess. Isn't that the word we use in education? We're modeling, that you are a living model for them. They're just really fortunate. I hope that you keep teaching.
I love this job at Dodge College so much, and I wake up every day convinced I'm going to screw it up somehow.
I totally feel you. I taught sketch comedy for 3 years at Pace University, and every day I'm like, they're going to figure me out today.
Yep.
You're a fraud.
Yep, completely a fraud. And I feel that way a lot of times when I really wake up in the morning before I go to set. Like I have these moments of like, oh, God, I mean, I can pull this off. I've done this before, but I don't know. This one feels particularly hard. Each one has their own challenges. And
maybe it's good for us to have that.
I think it's inevitable.
I've seen it on Actors Studio, like, when they've been doing theater their whole lives or tons of film. Do you ever still get butterflies in your stomach before, and most of them are like, yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I don't have butterflies, I'm done.
Yeah. That might mean you're dead.
Nancy, do you want to ask your question?
No, because it almost doesn't matter. But the big question that we want to ask everybody is, okay, why aren't you famous? But it just seems so silly because it doesn't even seem like that's anything. Well, let me ask you, is that anything you ever even cared about? Did you ever care about being famous?
Or what does it even mean to you? What does fame mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting because that's a big part of the exploration of that documentary about Lynn Fowkes.
Well, absolutely.
So I might have more perspective on it just because my subject talked about it a lot, and how much he felt, Warhol was more famous for being famous and how he killed art and made it flat art and advertising and art kind of vibe. And I'm like, give the people what they want. You can't be mad at Warhol for giving the people what they wanted. But I think when I was younger, for sure. Yeah. I thought I was going to be like just steeped in constant collaboration as a filmmaker. And when you think about a director that works, you think about a director that has some sort of recognition, whether it's, winning film festivals or being interviewed and things like that.
Tamar, it's amazing that you just said, I dreamt that I would be this huge collaborator.
Yeah.
You didn't say,
yes.
I thought I was going to be this big Hollywood director.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. I just thought it'd be constant, like working with people at the house or at the set, and
there you go. Goes back to the beginning of our conversation of you kind of looking out for other people, and that people give you energy, and that's where you get your drive from. And again, God, why are you making me emotional? How very dare you? It's just, it's like, it's so beautiful to me that like that's.
Having also a true artist.
I just want Hollywood to give me the opportunity to collaborate. Like no one says that,
Right. All right. Well,
and if they say it, they might not even feel it. It's a great buzz line to say in an interview, but I mean, it's so beautiful. And
thank you.
I hope everyone has the opportunity to collaborate with you.
Well, I think it's why you're also going to be a really great teacher.
It's the last day of school tomorrow. All the students you're never going to see them again, even though you think you will. And they say they will stay in touch. What's your advice to them?
Stay in touch.
Yes. Hey, thanks for checking us out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.